Hello. Many students often struggle in understanding this concept of counter current mechanism in the kidneys. Let's try to quickly understand this complicated process in simple terms. All of us are familiar with the structure of nephron. It has a Bowman's capsule, a glomerulus, which helps in the process of ultrafiltration. The renal tubule consists of three parts: the proximal convoluted tubule, the descending and the ascending limb of the Hendy's loop, and then you have the distal convoluted tubule, which ultimately drains into the collecting duct. There is a U-shaped blood vessel called vasa recta, which runs parallel to the Hendy's loop. Countercurrent flow means the flow of fluid in opposite directions. There are two examples of countercurrent flow. The first one is the flow of tubular fluid through the descending and the ascending limb of the Hendy's loop, and the second one is the flow of blood through the descending and the ascending limb of the vasa recta. Now there are two types of countercurrent mechanism which exist in the kidneys: the countercurrent multiplication system and the countercurrent exchange. First, let's see how is the countercurrent multiplication helpful. Countercurrent multiplication is the process in which the gradual increase in the osmotic gradient is formed in the interstitial fluid of the renal medulla. Now let's discuss this step by step. The first step is known as the active reabsorption of sodium and chloride. Active reabsorption of sodium ions and chloride ions by the thick ascending limb of Hendy's. So let's see what exactly happens during this time. Now, if you look closely at the thick ascending limb of the Hendy's, reabsorption of sodium and chloride ions, this portion, look at this portion specifically. Reabsorption of sodium and chloride from the tubular fluid takes place actively with the help of ATP. So, the reabsorption takes place actively from the thick ascending limb of Hendy's loop. But if you look closely, it is completely impermeable to water. So water reabsorption does not take place in this part of the Hendy's loop because the cells of the thick ascending limb are impermeable to water. As a result, there is a buildup of sodium and chloride ions in the interstitial fluid of the renal medulla. Now let's come to the second point. What is the second point? An osmotic gradient is established. An osmotic gradient is established. Now let's see how exactly is an osmotic gradient established. Now, since the tubular fluid is constantly moving from the descending limb into the ascending limb, if you look closely, the ultrafiltrate is continuously moving from the descending limb into the ascending limb of the Hendy's loop, and the thick ascending limb is constantly reabsorbing the sodium and the chloride ions. As a result, the interstitial fluid of the medulla gets extremely concentrated with the sodium and the chloride ions. This results in the formation of an osmotic gradient which can range from approximately 300 milliosmoliter in the outer medulla to approximately 1200 in the deep inner medulla. Now pay attention to the descending limb of the Hendy's loop. It is very much permeable to water. So you can see the water ions being reabsorbed by the descending limb of the Hendy's loop. But it is completely impermeable to solutes except urea. It can reabsorb urea, but it is impermeable to solutes other than urea. So because the osmolarity of the interstitial fluid outside the descending limb is higher compared to the tubular fluid present within it, water moves out of the descending limb via osmosis, that is passively. This causes the osmolarity of the tubular fluid to increase. As the fluid continues along the descending limb, its osmolarity increases even more, and at the hairpin loop, the osmolarity can be as high as 1200. Now, as the ascending limb of the loop is impermeable to water, but it is constantly reabsorbing sodium and chloride from the tubular fluid into the interstitial fluid of the renal medulla. So, the osmolarity of the tubular fluid progressively decreases as it flows through the ascending limb. So, you can see that the value progressively decreases from 1200 to 900 to 600 to 400 and then eventually to 300. Now we come to the third point. The third point says that the cells in the collecting duct, they reabsorb more water and urea. So let me write that down. The cells of the collecting duct, they will reabsorb more water and urea. Now all of us have heard about this particular hormone, the ADH, the antidiuretic hormone. When there is a deficiency of water in our body, the ADH increases the water permeability of the collecting duct and the water quickly moves via osmosis out of the collecting duct. Now when water moves out of the collecting duct, over here you can see that the water is moving out of the collecting duct under the influence of this particular hormone, antidiuretic hormone, and then this water enters directly into the vasa recta. It moves directly into the vasa recta. Now with loss of water, the urea left behind in the tubular fluid of the collecting duct becomes increasingly concentrated. You can see the urea over here. This becomes increasingly concentrated. Now because the duct cells deep in the medulla are permeable to urea, it can easily diffuse out into the interstitial fluid of the medulla. So I hope you have understood the third point. The cells of the collecting duct become permeable to water under the influence of this particular hormone, antidiuretic hormone, as a result of which the water diffuses out into the interstitial fluid of the medulla and then eventually enters into the vasa recta. Now with loss of water, the urea which is left behind in the tubular fluid of the collecting duct becomes increasingly concentrated, and because the duct cells of the in the inner medullary portion, the duct cells are permeable to urea, the urea can easily diffuse out from the fluid in the collecting duct from here into the interstitial fluid of the medulla. Okay. Now let's move on to the last and final point of countercurrent multiplier, which is known as urea recycling. It is known as urea recycling. Now what happens in urea recycling? As urea accumulates in the interstitial fluid, you can see the urea accumulating over here in the interstitial fluid, some of it can diffuse into the tubular fluid of the descending limb over here. You can see the white arrow of urea diffusing into the tubular fluid of the descending limb, and also to the thin ascending limb, to the thin part of the ascending limb over here, to the thin part of the ascending limb over here. But we have to remember one thing. We have to remember that the thick ascending limb, the distal convoluted tubule and the cortical portion of the collecting duct, they are impermeable to urea. Okay, so the thick part of the ascending limb, the distal convoluted tubule, that means this part, and the cortical portion of the collecting duct, they are all impermeable to urea. Now as fluid flows along the collecting duct, water reabsorption continues via osmosis because ADH is present. Now this water reabsorption further increases the concentration of urea in the tubular fluid. More urea diffuses out into the interstitial fluid of the inner renal medulla, and this cycle continues. In this way, the reabsorption of water from the tubular fluid of the duct promotes the build-up of urea in the interstitial fluid of the renal medulla, which in turn promotes water reabsorption. So the solutes left behind in the lumen thus become very concentrated, and a small volume of concentrated urine and a very small volume of concentrated urine ultimately is excreted out of the body. So this is about the counter current multiplier, which can be divided into 4 steps. I hope you remember all the 4 steps. The first one is active reabsorption of sodium and chloride by the thick ascending wall of Hende's loop. Second one is the osmotic gradient being established. The third one is the collecting duct reabsorbing more water and urea under the influence of ADH hormone. And finally, the fourth point, which says urea recycling, where the urea is being reabsorbed by the medullary portion of the collecting duct and being reabsorbed by the descending limb and the thin part of the ascending limb of Hende's loop. Alright, now let's move on to the next mechanism, which is known as counter current exchange. Okay, so it is a process by which the solutes and water are passively exchanged between the blood of the vasa recta. Let me change the color. Let me take red. Okay, so yes, so between the blood of the vasa recta and the interstitial fluid of the renal medulla. Now remember that the vasa recta also consists of a descending and ascending limb that are parallel to each other and also parallel to the nephron loop, that is the Hende's loop. Now just as the tubular fluid flows in opposite directions in the Hende's loop, blood also flows in opposite direction in the ascending and the descending parts of the vasa recta. So this is your descending part of the vasa recta and this is your ascending part of the vasa recta. Now blood entering the vasa recta has an osmolarity of around 300. You can see over here it has an osmolarity of around 300. Now as it flows along the descending part, let me write over here descending so that we don't get confused. So this is the descending part of the vasa recta and this one is the ascending part of the vasa recta. So as blood enters the vasa recta, it has an osmolarity of about 300 as it flows along the descending part into the renal medulla, where the interstitial fluid becomes increasingly concentrated. You remember the interstitial fluid getting increasingly concentrated, right? So from here you can see the 600 and then gradually as you go deep into the medulla it increases to 1200, isn't it? So as the blood flows along the descending part into the renal medulla, the interstitial fluid also becomes increasingly concentrated. As a result, the sodium chloride and the urea diffuses from the interstitial fluid of the renal medulla. It diffuses into the blood of the vasa recta. Okay, but after its osmolarity is increased, so see, if the sodium chloride is entering into the blood of the vasa recta, the concentration of the blood will gradually increase, the osmolarity of the blood will gradually increase. So it has increased from around 300 to 1200. Right, you can see deep into the inner medulla, the blood having an osmolarity of around 1200. But after its osmolarity has increased, the blood now flows into the ascending part of the vasa recta. Here the blood flows through a region where the interstitial fluid becomes increasingly less concentrated. Why? Because you are going from downwards to upwards. So now you see that the osmolarity is getting decreased. From 1200 it is going gradually decreasing towards 600, isn't it? So here the blood is flowing through a region where the interstitial fluid becomes increasingly less concentrated. As a result, the sodium chloride now starts moving out into the interstitial fluid and water diffuses from the interstitial fluid into the vasa recta. You can see the water molecules over here. So the water molecules diffuses back into the blood from the interstitial fluid, right? So the osmolarity of blood leaving the vasa recta is only slightly higher than the osmolarity of blood entering the vasa recta. As you can see the values written over here, the blood leaving the vasa recta is approximately, its osmolarity is 320, which is slightly higher compared to the blood which entered into the vasa recta, which was around 300. Right, so the vasa recta provides oxygen and nutrients to the renal medulla without washing out or diminishing the osmotic gradient. So that covers just about the topic of counter current mechanism in the kidneys. I hope you understood the topic clearly. Thank you so much. Do let me know in the comments what other topics you would like to study. For more of such videos, do stay tuned to this channel, Biology for Life. Bye.